Good day, listeners. Welcome to the world of Chandamama. Let's continue with Saga of Vishnu. In the previous chapter, we saw that sage Satyavrata found a small fish which grew bigger and bigger with each passing day. Let's see what happens next. Chapter 2, the episode of Dhruva. As the little fish whom sage Satyavrata had sheltered grew big and big, he left him in the sea. Time passed. As usual, the sage remained engrossed in meditation. One day, the huge fish came floating to him. He now looked magnificent and supernatural. Satyavrata instantly recognized who the fish was. Hands folded, he said, "O Narayana, who has appeared before me in this unusual form, I bow to thee. Who can unravel the mystery of your action? There must be some strong reasons for you to assume such a form. Now, let me know what instruction you have for me." "One of the reasons for my assuming this form is to protect you from the great deluge which is about to submerge the earth," said the fish. "When you see a luminous boat heading towards you with 7 illustrious rishis in it, get into it at once. I shall pull the boat to safety. In that dense and dark atmosphere, the star Dhruva, pole star, would be my guiding sign. There will be a new creation after the deluge. You will be the Manu or the forerunner of that new creation, bearing the name Vaivasvata." Satyavrata bowed to the mighty fish, which then disappeared in the distant horizon. At the end of the cycle of ages, Lord Brahma, the Creator, was in deep slumber. Everything was dark with a cyclonic weather working havoc. Brahma's sleep, in fact, was a state of trance. While in that condition, he uttered words of great import descending from the infinity. The words took shape and color in 4 groups: white, red, yellow, and blue. They were the 4 Vedas. The new creation could not be launched, nor could the new cycle of ages begin without the Vedas containing their secrets. While the gods and the sages eagerly looked forward to the new adventure, their arch enemy, a terrible demon named Somakasura, was determined to foil the plan. He dared into Brahma's presence and stole the Vedas and plunged it into the deep sea. The earth was totally lost in the tumultuous water, but Satyavrata could see a luminous boat approaching him. As it came nearer, the 7 rishis seated in it were visible to him. Satyavrata lost no time in boarding the boat. He carried with him some of the essential medicinal herbs as well as seeds. He observed that the boat was fastened to the horn of the great fish. Through the surging waves, the fish pulled the boat speedily in the direction of the pole star. Soon the boat reached the peak of a grand mountain. The fish swam away. Deep down the sea, the demon Somakasur was sure that his mission had been fulfilled. Delighted, he was circling around the cave in which he had deposited the Vedas. The Vedas, meanwhile, had turned into 4 little children. They were crying in protest against their captivity. The demon gloated over their plight. Suddenly, what should he see but a huge fish diving towards him? Before he could realize what was happening, 4 mighty arms came out of the fish. By and by, a charming figure emerged out of it. Somakasura knew that the one confronting him was none other than Lord Vishnu. The two were immediately locked in a fight. In no time, Vishnu vanquished Somakasura, cutting him down to pieces by his all powerful weapon, the Sudarshana Chakra. The Lord thereafter went in search of the crying infants and picked them up in his 4 hands. They stopped crying and began playing with the dazzling gems like the Kaustubha and the Srivatsa in Vishnu's necklace. As Vishnu emerged from the ocean, the 7 sages and Satyavrata were thrilled. They paid their obeisance to him. The transition from one cycle of ages to another, marked by nature's fury, was now coming to a close. Land was surfacing again. The course of the wind grew tender. Light dispelled the darkness. Goddess Saraswati, who was already awake, began singing, accompanied by her veena. The sweet music terminated Brahma's trance. But he felt uneasy. He knew intuitively that something was missing. Then he wondered, where were the Vedas which had emanated from him while he lay in a trance? However, he was not required to worry about it for long, for Vishnu appeared before him and handed over the Vedas to him. O dispeller of all ignorance and remover of darkness, Vishnu, I bow to thee, said Brahma while accepting his lost property. Vishnu's role as the Matsya Avatara thus came to an end. He was back in his abode, Vaikuntha. Brahma gave his attention to the new creation. Satyavrata as Vaivasvata Manu became his instrument. The 7 rishis returned to their positions in the sky and began revolving around Dhruva. When Sethsutta had narrated the saga thus far, his listeners, the other sages, said, O noble soul, the star Dhruva seems to be very important. We are eager to hear about him. Sutta then narrated the episode of Dhruva in order to satisfy their curiosity. The position of Dhruva is very high indeed. When we visualize Vishnu as the cosmos, the star Dhruva can be called his crown. To know the history of Dhruva, we have to go to a remote past. The earlier Manu Swayambhuva's son, King Uttanapada, had 2 queens, Suniti and Suruchi. The elder queen Suniti had a son named Dhruva, and the younger queen Suruchi had a son named Uttam. It so happened that one day while King Uttanapada and the queen Suruchi were sitting together, Uttam climbed to his father's lap. Dhruva, who saw this, tried to do the same with loving enthusiasm. But he received a jolt when Queen Suruchi pushed him down from the king's lap. Don't you dare sit where my son sits, she shouted angrily and proudly. You have to be reborn as my son if ever such a desire of yours is to be fulfilled, she added. Dhruva stood before them, dazed. He looked at his father, expecting him to console him, but the king did not utter a word. He did not have the courage to annoy the younger queen. Queen Suruchi seemed to relish the boy's discomfiture. She laughed and said, I see you singing the name of Lord Vishnu. Why don't you ask him for the boon to be born as my son? Tears welled in Dhruva's eyes. He fixed his gaze on her and said, You have given me an excellent advice, mother. I am grateful to you. I will indeed ask Lord Vishnu what I need. He then went away. Dhruva appears to be a fool. How can he pray to Vishnu to be born as my son unless he dies? wondered Queen Suruchi, looking at her husband and laughing. It is probable that the king did not like his younger wife's attitude towards Dhruva, but he said nothing, because he was very much fascinated by her and would not like to displease her. One of the palace maids had by then informed Queen Suniti about Dhruva's experience with his stepmother and father. As soon as she heard this and saw Dhruva, she burst into tears and said, "My unlucky child, why did you aspire to as lofty a seat as your father's lap, being born of me? Don't you know that we are hated by Suruchi and being avoided by the king?" "But my younger mother gave me an excellent advice, to pray to Lord Vishnu," said Dhruva between sobs. "What? To be born of her?" asked Queen Suniti. "Well, mother, I am going to follow only the first part of her advice and not the second. I shall pray to Lord Vishnu, but not to be born as her son, but to occupy a position far loftier than my father's lap. In fact, the loftiest position imaginable. Mother, please do not prevent me from proceeding to the forest, to a spot suitable for my meditation on Vishnu," said Dhruva. At first, Queen Suniti thought that it was only a momentary impulse of Dhruva, but soon Dhruva really set out for the forest. Nothing would stop him. As he entered the forest, he came face to face with the great sage Narada. "Where are you going, O little prince? Is it for playing hide and seek with your friends?" asked the sage. "I am going to sit down for tapasya," answered Dhruva. "Is there any play named tapasya? Well, I had never heard of it," commented Narada. "Oh, great sage, I mean a deep meditation on Vishnu," said Dhruva. He then narrated to Narada the events that had prompted him to take such a decision. "Forget about it, my sweet boy. Come, let me lead you to your father. He will receive you with the love you deserve as a son," proposed Narada. "O sage, I am no more in need of any human love. It matters not whether my father repents for his conduct towards me or not. I am determined to invoke the grace of Lord Vishnu deep in my heart. Nothing short of that can satisfy me any longer," was Dhruva's firm response. Sage Narada smiled and said, "My boy, I was only testing you. Surely you are right in your decision. Once I too had experienced humiliation at human hands, which had led me to perform tapasya. I shall help you in your endeavor. Select a spot at Madhuvan and sit down and recite Om Namo Narayana and meditate on the Lord. My blessings are with you." Dhruva bowed to the sage and went ahead. The seekers who were listening to Sage Suta's narration of the story of Dhruva asked, "Why was Narada humiliated? Who humiliated him? O sage, please satisfy our curiosity." Friends, this is about chapter 2. Let's continue again with the next chapter in the next audiobook. Until then, this is Ramya signing off.